I want to start asking Hero and Josephine, how have your lives changed after the first movie? Because I imagine that now you have so much love from the fans.
I think that I think the past year has just been very different for everyone. So I think it's sort of difficult to measure how our lives have changed because of this. If we're just going, you know, with the pandemic in the past 6 months, but before that, I think it's just a whole different experience going on a press tour and meeting people and having people know your name that you've never met before. And I think it's changed for the better, but it's just, yeah, we're in a very different position to the position we were in before these films came out.
Hero?
Yeah, I would say the same. It's a good point Joe made about judging the change given the circumstance we're in with COVID and everything. But if I just try and kind of isolate the thought of how after's changed my life, I think initially it was like a big dramatic change, and I think also like coming back home and being with the same people in the same place, I've realized like I do have a bit of control over how things change, and they change massively for the better when it comes to like my work, and I'm so grateful for all of that. But I think I'm lucky enough to be able to keep a lot of the same aspects of my life that I loved and didn't want to change the same. So I've been lucky. I've been able to balance it quite well, I think.
Dylan, how was the experience of joining this sequel of After, and what kind of things do you highlight of your teammates?
I mean, the experience was great. Super professional, super fun to shoot. I mean, I usually kind of weigh it on a couple different things, which is, you know, how well it's run in terms of its actual production, which it was run really well, and how fun the cast and crew are to work with, which was also perfect. So for me, it was a great experience. And the second part of the question was, what's my highlight of filming it? Was that what you asked?
What kind of things do you highlight of your teammates like Josephine and Hero?
I really think that they're both great people here. I'm obliged to say it in front of them, obviously. I mean, you kind of put me on the spot. It's not like I'm going to, talk ill about them in front of them. I mean, Hero's got some really well-leveled pictures in the background, and Joe's couch is a beautiful solid color of gray. So yeah. I think obviously indicative of great taste.
In the trailer, we have seen that this sequel is going to be more intense, with more romance, lust, and especially more sex. How was shooting all these scenes?
It's super, super technical, and it's very unsexy, and it's every little thing, and the angles, and I think when you're shooting a movie, you have to do things that look. If you were to see them in real life, it's like, that's so weird, but it's just because it looks a certain way on camera. And I think it was probably easier for us because we've already done this before, and so it was sort of just, you have a relationship and you're comfortable, and yeah.
With all these sex scenes, do you think that this movie could be compared to others like 50 Shades of Grey?
I struggle with that question personally because I haven't seen 50 Shades of Grey. But I think people know what to expect from it. Like it's a romance that covers all of the kind of great themes that all romances do, and sex is one of them. And hopefully we got those scenes right, and they're entertaining too. But I couldn't personally compare to 50 Shades because unfortunately I haven't seen it.
Hero and Dylan, you are rivals in the movie, and I want to ask you, when you were shooting, were you always good friends, or did you have some moments of enmity?
So every morning at 6 a.m, we're depending on call time, but we'd find a time we'd both just wrap like ties around our knuckles and just fight it out for like a good hour. And we just fight every day, and then makeup would cover up the bruises and stuff, and just to like really maintain that hatred for each other.
The tough thing is, so all of these teeth are fake. Hero punches really hard. He's got a strong left hook.
Jokes aside, me and Dylan are actually really good friends. Unfortunately, sorry to disappoint people who expected us to be like our characters, but. No, we get on really well, which makes it fun to hate each other on screen, I guess.
We also knew each other from before we started filming too, or we had met kind of previously, and we were in Florence, and we were hanging out for a little bit. So that kind of like definitely made it easier too to come on the set.
Yeah, 100% for me as well.
Josephine, in real life, would you prefer a guy like Hardin or a guy like Trevor?
You know, I said in another interview that I don't believe in moral binaries, and I would want a guy who is a mix of the unresolved emotional trauma of a Hardin and the stability of a Trevor. And then the West, which is my local newspaper, picked that up, and it made me sound like a maniac. So I think I'm gonna, like, I don't. Can I not answer that quick? Can I go with single and happy and self-worth and self-love and that answer?
Nice. Lonely.
Yeah.
It's a good answer.
After a previous experience in the first movie, has it been easier to build the chemistry and passion between Hardy and Tessa in this second film?
I'd say it's like the same. I think like you're acting, and if we couldn't do that, if we had to take a year to get to know each other, to act that way, we wouldn't be very good at what we do. So I think hopefully, it was exactly the same. I mean, like we said earlier, with me and Dylan knowing each other and me and Joe having known each other for a year, there's obviously a sense of like there's no more ice to break, and you have the familiarity with each other offset to be able to really, you know, for it to be natural and not awkward or anything. But I think we're lucky that it never was in the first place. So we're lucky we have a very professional cast, and we're all great at what they do. So I don't think we needed that time to get to know each other to improve what we did on screen. Having said that, it is nice to know your cast members well.
Yeah, and I was just going to say, I think to a certain degree, chemistry, it's to do with, it's not something you can sort of force. You just do your job. You show up there and you play your character, and you're working with someone who's doing their, and it's a result of the casting and the writing and everything else around you that creates that. It's not yeah.
And my last question, what do you think the fans are going to enjoy more of your characters in this movie?
I think they're going to enjoy seeing Tessa come out of her shell a little bit more. I sort of hate that because it implies she was a turtle in the first movie, but she wasn't. She most definitely was not a turtle. She was a human being. But I think that they're going to enjoy seeing a different side to Tessa and an older version of her, and someone with a little more independence and confidence and an ability to be assertive and to, you know, do her thing.
First of all, as the author of After, what is your opinion about the second movie of the saga, and what do you think the fans are going to enjoy more?
I think the fans are going to enjoy more drama. It's a lot steamier. There's a lot more character development. We see a lot more intimate moments between Hardin and Tessa, which is what they really want. For me, being on set for both, the second one was definitely more fun for me. And it was definitely, I got to actually work on the movie instead of just kind of sitting there. It was a pretty good experience, but a lot different than the first one.
On social media, I see a lot of fans completely in love with After. What do you think is the most special thing about this saga to engage so many people around the world?
I would love to know, but I think it's, from when I ask them what it is, it's the up and down, the emotional ties to these characters that you are in their head for so many pages that it's impossible not to feel for them. I've also known that a lot of, especially younger women, relate a lot to the characters. Even if it's not just Tessa, they find themselves in a character each time. Like, even if it's Molly's anger or Steph's jealousy or Hardin's past with his father, there's always something that they feel a connection to. But I don't know the secret ingredient. I wish I did, but that's what they tell me.
In the moment you started to write After as a fanfiction on Wattpad, did you think that your story could reach the relevance that has nowadays?
Definitely not. I had no idea. I just was writing from a place of passion and fun and to kind of escape my day-to-day life. So it wasn't anything that I intended anyone really to read, especially not millions of people. And then when it got published, I still just had no idea how successful it would be after being published. So and I never saw any of this coming.
Some people define After as a teenager version of 50 Shades of Grey, and I want to know if you agree with this affirmation.
I mean, yes and no. I think it's just a very generalized statement to make. Just because it's about two people that have sex scenes, it automatically has to be like 50 Shades, I think is a little like insulting to her and me. But I do think, for me, I love 50 Shades of Grey, and I was inspired by 50 Shades of Grey, and I love what it's done for millions of women. So in one way, I'm like, thank you. But in another, the plot lines are very different. The characters are different. So I wish that people would stop comparing everything to something else that women create. It's like, there's other books that have sex scenes and drama aside from 50 Shades.
Right now, when you think about the whole story of After, are there things or parts of the books that you would like to change?
I wouldn't say change, just because I know for whatever reason the original worked so well, so I wouldn't really change. But there are things that Harden specifically was too much. Like, I don't know if you've read the books, but there's like a thing with Sheets, and he's just very. There are things that now 7 years later I'm like appalled by his behavior, and Tessa too. There's a couple of times where I wish Tessa would have been a little more mature. But again, that's kind of part of their character. So I don't know if I would necessarily change it, but I have a different opinion on it now, 7 years later.
Do you think that fanfiction should be taken more into account into the literature?
Absolutely. I've read so many fan fictions that are incredible. And the reality that nobody wants to admit, even though everyone wants to say negative things about fan fiction, the reality is publishing is a very, very old model. And we have to bring new voices into the publishing world. We can't just keep publishing the same authors over and over. We need more representation. We need more diversity. We need more everything. And we need new voices. So for me, I'm trying to say it in a nice way, but the people who have had a problem with fan fiction are usually people who have tried to publish and it wasn't successful, and they're like want to find a reason not to like something. But for me, I'm like, mind your own business, write a fan fiction, like don't write fan fiction. Like, I very much love fan fiction, stand by it. Clearly millions and millions of people love it. So I don't think it's for some guy in a suit in an office to decide what is literature and what's not.
Also about fanfictions, and also about After, because it started as fanfiction about Harry Styles. Do you think that sometimes it could be problematic, write about the stories about real people?
I go back and forth on this. I'm not really sure how I feel about it, because I understand why it could be kind of uncomfortable, but for me, I wasn't writing it most of the people I know who write fan fiction, it's a lot of people I know, none of us are thinking of it as the actual person. It's more of just, this is what the character looks like. This is the world that we love and we want to expand on. Like with After specifically, you could take out the Harry factor and I have a lot of fans that don't even realize or care that it was ever about Harry Styles. So I think it depends what your intention is. If I was to write a story that was exactly like Harry Styles' life, or anyone, not just Harry Styles, but anyone's life, I think that there could be cross lines. But for me, I just wrote a story out of like pure passion for loving books, and I loved One Direction at the time, and I didn't write it thinking like, oh, this is Harry Styles' life. So for me, I don't know. I think it could go both ways. Everybody has their own opinion.
And my last question, are there many changes in the movie compared to the book in this second movie?
There are some changes from the book just because it's so long and we can't fit everything in. And we tried though, so I think it's still definitely more faithful. There are a couple things that I didn't necessarily agree with, but a movie is a collaboration and the director overall is the decision maker. So there are like the ice skating scene for me is a scene that I really wish was different, but that's just an example of collaboration, and that, in the novel world, you can be in control of everything the characters do, but on a movie set, you really have to take everything else into account and worry about making the best film, not only bringing exactly what's on the page to the screen.